The 2022 Saints saw a lot throughout the year. They saw a quarterback break his back. They saw a defense be amazing until it got tired. And we're going to break down all of the things that happened on the field with those 2022 New Orleans Saints right now from Local Football Flavor. Welcome to Local Football Flavor, connecting the fan bases of the NFL.
All right, Saints fans, Joe and I here. Let's talk about your New Orleans Saints. Now, mid-season, we met with a fellow Saints fan to talk what the Saints were doing right, what the Saints were doing wrong. And let's be honest. What are we looking at here? We've got a Saints team that has some legal trouble. We've got a Saints team that has some oldness trouble. We have a Saints team that has talent, but underutilized or not used at all. And when you look at what the Saints are doing, yes, their record was indicative of a team that probably went back and forth the whole year. If you watch Saints games like we did and probably like you did, you'll have noticed that. The Saints were a back and forth team. Mm-hmm. Some days the offense would be putting something together down the field. The next game, they couldn't even throw it 20 yards. And the next one game, the defense would be getting a turnover or two. The next game, absolutely nothing. And when you look at the New Orleans Saints and we think about the post-Peyton era, the New Orleans Saints are not trending in the right direction. They have a team that, while it does have talent and while it does have pieces, they are in need of good coaching. And they are in need of some solidifying, cauterizing something. Because the fact, and Saints fans, you can blast me all you want with this one, but the fact that you have a guy named Taysom Hill on your team, and he did not see the ball a significant portion of a lot of games.
This season, really.
That you have a quarterback named Jameis Winston on your team that after he practically broke his back, came back healthy again, you still kept in Andy Dalton. And you have a player in Rashid Shaheed who, by all intents and purposes, is exactly what Al Davis from the Raiders would have died for 74 million times to have. And he sees the ball 3-4 times a game because Andy Dalton can't throw it that far. And when he does, he's more mistake prone. And so, all of this said, Joe, the New Orleans Saints, with this up and down season, there's a lot of good things that happen, but there's equally a lot of bad things that happen. So tell us some of the good things that you saw from the New Orleans Saints this year.
Yes, so the Saints, to me, have some really bright spots, and I'm going to keep this strictly on the field for the point of today's episode. Kamara, when he ran the ball, got much better as the year went on. I mean, he hit stride as the season went on. And I have a unique fact that I think is worth bearing that you can see in tape. Kamara, when given the ball on a handoff, the play following a Taysom Hill run got 6 times the average of his normal runs.
I like that.
That to me is mind-boggling, but it's true. Taysom Hill is a thumper, and Kamara was able to go through the gap after the fact. And it was remarkable. I mean, Kamara, to me, his turn on was fantastic. The number one bright spot of this team that outperformed where they thought they would have been, to me, is Olave. Olave, just amazing rookie year. I don't think you realistically could have asked for more out of the guy, especially given the turnover at the quarterback position. You know, imagine him with Jameis throwing the ball down the field. Him and Shaheed would still be scoring. So I look at what this team did as they grew throughout the season. Those are the bright spots I like a lot. I also immensely love how their defense was able to start games, especially that front. That defensive front, when it was fresh in virtually every game, dominated the game until they tired out. And this is still a defense that finished top 5 against the pass. So they were getting pass rush and they were covering. But the problem the Saints got in the most situations when we look at the yin and the yang was their inability to truly dominate on third down. They gave themselves a disproportionate amount of third and mediums and third and shorts, which is really a credit to Dalton not getting sacked that much, but and making bad decisions as well. But at the end of the day, they weren't converting at the same rate that they should have been on those thirds and mediums and thirds and shorts. And when we look at this, we have to look at why. Why were we not giving Taysom Hill the ball in the beginning of the year? Why were we essentially not able to mesh?
Mm-hmm.
My view of looking at this was if you had a box of Legos that was supposed to build one specific thing, but you
Mm-hmm.
poured them all on the floor first and you never got out the instructions. And you thought you could make a lot of things that look really cool because you have a lot of fun and awesome pieces, but
Mm-hmm.
what you built just didn't work. And to
Yeah.
me, that is the summation of the Saints offense. And the Saints really
Mm-hmm.
overall as a team. The defense was good, and if you would have given them a lead, they would have dominated.
Mm-hmm.
They did not bring it all together. And Bob, I want to give it to you because from an X's and O standpoint, I get infuriated with the Steelers offensive coordinator. Obviously, I'm here in Pittsburgh, but I can see why the folks in New Orleans just have a rage that I can't even hold a candle to. So to give you the floor here, Bob, about the Saints and where they were at.
Yeah. So I like the Saints. I'm a Steelers fan, but that I'm a fan of the New Orleans Saints as well. And going back through the season and just watching these games, you're just led to a lot of heartbreak as a fan. And you want to see these young guys do well. You want to see them outperforming the eye test. And a lot of the young guys, like Olave in particular, Shaheed in particular, I think that the wide receiver room, they got to get rid of Michael Thomas. I've said that.
Yes.
They cannot wait for him anymore. Um, the wide receiver room has room to grow. Callaway was said to be a pretty good player. He's okay if they throw him the ball. Shaheed is good downfield. Olave is a good presence elsewhere. It's good. Tight end. You've got a bunch of guys at tight end that could perform. That on any given day, they're good. You've got Taysom Hill. You've got Kamara. At least you had Kamara this year. You're probably not going to have him next year.
Probably
And
not.
that is kind of one of the damaging things for the New Orleans Saints is when a guy gets hurt, there's nobody to back him up.
Yeah,
There,
almost like the Rams in that regard.
the team is so dramatically top heavy at skill position players that when they do get tired, and even on defense, when they do get tired, they just can't do anything anymore. And you see this as the game goes on. They got off to a 7 in the last game of the season. Just taking the last game of the season as an example, Olave scored a touchdown.
On the first drive, I believe.
They got the ball back a significant number of times after that. They even caused 2 turnovers, which wasn't their cup of tea MO all season. And you look at that team, and they could not put it in the end zone. It was like this. It was like watching the Steelers. They could not put it in the end zone. They couldn't go anywhere. Now, kudos to Carolina for stopping them and making sure that didn't happen. But I can't sit here and say that Andy Dalton should be their quarterback going into next season. I can't do it. And honestly, I don't
But I
know if
also can't say that Andy Dalton was the problem either.
No, I don't think he is. I don't think he is, but it's truly like when I look at the New Orleans Saints, and maybe it's biased towards Drew Brees. Great, stellar quarterbacks, Hall of Fame quarterbacks, make the players around them better. We talk about it all the times with Patrick Mahomes. We talk about it with Tom Brady. We talk about it with Peyton Manning. And when you pair a superior quarterback with a superior talent, well, then you've got legendary status right there. Mm-hmm. And that's what Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison were. Peyton Manning with Reggie Wayne, Peyton Manning, Edgerrin James. All you talk about legends and you talk about the game. Then you talk about the very good. And Andy Dalton is in that category of very good. But he's tending to be on that downside of very good lately. He is on the very good, but if he makes a mistake, we really can't come back. We don't have the ability to come back because our defense is old. It's old, Joe. It is probably one of the oldest defenses in the league. There are guys on that team that were playing or felt like they were playing when they were at least in the league. Maybe not playing for the Saints. They were at least in the league when the Saints last won the Super Bowl. Now, I'm just spouting probably nonsense at that point, but it just feels like it. And when you look at the Saints from a defensive standpoint and you talk about their pass rush early in the games, where does it go? And the thing about the Saints is that's the whole point is they were a team like we were talking on the Rams on previous episodes. They're a team that was built around a core group of guys, core group of players, and they never got the backups. They never upgraded. They never went out there and said, I'm going to go out there. Like, you should not still be rolling out guys like Mark Ingram. You should not be doing that. You should be going out there, and you should be giving when Kamara was doing bad, because I had Kamara on fantasy, when he was doing bad, that's a good sign to tell you, let's try some of these other guys for an extended period of time. Or, hey, how about we just use the guy that does it all and just play Taysom Hill for a while?
Ding.
Like, when you look at this team, you have the and Saints Nation will agree with this. You have one of the most undisputed, most talented talents in the NFL on your team, and you've got him going in and blocking. You've got him in running routes as a tight end.
You got him non-existent for 3/4 of the season.
And then you have talent like Shaheed that is very situational. You have him getting three receptions a game. If you want to know a really fun stat, a super fun stat, you look at Shaheed's numbers where he's caught the ball, and he is ahead of, I believe he's ahead of Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill on yards per catch in terms of receptions, right? And he is on terms of just catching the ball and getting yak. He's tremendous. I believe he's 9th on that list. Debo's obviously towards the top of that list as well. But this is a guy that came on towards the end of the season because he was hurt at the beginning of the season, comes on late season. In the last 5 games or seven games or whatever, accumulates 500 some yards, 3 touchdowns.
He's a lightning freak. There's no doubt about that.
Electric punt returner, and you still can't win games, or you win games because the other people's talent is out, so you take advantage. That's great, but there is nothing in the quarterback situation here to inspire me to be okay, the Saints are going to be better next year. Andy Dalton's not going to get better. He's the best that he's going to get.
Yeah.
He's not going to get better. And if the talent around you, like Olave and Shaheed, get better, but Andy Dalton's not improving, then, you and I were talking about this after the Arizona game, I believe, where I was like, wow, that's great, Andy Dalton, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, Andy Dalton sucks. And then next week, Andy Dalton sucked. And so I'm sitting here today, and you're defending Andy Dalton in a way.
When I watched the Saints, I don't believe Andy Dalton was the true problem in which they lost. When they lost, it was rarely his fault per se. Andy Dalton did not leave a glaring skid mark saying, this is where I went off the rails and everything fell apart. I mean, this isn't like the story of Carolina. where it was
Mhm.
obvious. Dalton, I mean, let's face it, just because Ben and Brady made it late in their 30s doesn't mean that everyone's going to or everyone should. Dalton had
Mhm.
himself a very nice career. He's certainly not trying to throw under a bus at the end, especially when he was in Cincinnati. He did some good stuff. But at
Mhm.
this point in game, he's essentially holding on to the last straw to stay in the league as a game manager. And
But the Saints
it,
can't use a game manager.
no, that's the thing. The Saints need what was
They need a
said
ball mover.
the first day Jameis Winston stepped into Florida State's campus. They have themselves a Ferrari and they need someone to race it. Someone
Mhm.
who's not afraid to chuck it. And to me, the biggest regret of this entire season was Jameis Winston's injury. And
Mhm.
if he can truly become healthy enough to play, not just healthy enough to be a roster, but healthy enough to play, I would love his style to come out with this receiving core. Just to
Yeah,
watch Jameis chuck it to Shaheed just 6 times a game, 4 of them be touchdowns, 2 of them be interceptions. That's the football that the Saints need,
and
and
Joe,
that's what I want to see.
this is the thing.
Or
When you
it
look
doesn't have to be Jameis, but a Jameis-ish person.
and this is the thing too. When we talked about their defense, their pass rush was so thin,
Mm-hmm.
and they can't rotate people out. And the players that they have, they're older. Their
Yeah, that was
linebackers,
part of them tiring out. Was
their
the age is certainly a part
linebackers,
of that.
their linebackers were good. Their linebackers were probably better than Carolina because Carolina would give up a lot of intermediate throws, and the Saints were very good at not doing that so much. Their linebackers were actually really good. Their secondary was pretty good when healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And the secondary, you need a lot of guys back there. And I just don't see one or two guys like, Tyrann Mathieu is old now. Like he's not honey badgering anything right now. And they need to think about the future here, and they need to think about it. And I think this season, if final thoughts on the Saints here, if I'm looking at the Saints at a whole season, I would say that I'm just underwhelmed. And
Yeah,
this is a team that should have won the division. We were talking at the beginning of the year that this defense was good enough to win the division.
it
Jameis
was.
Winston goes down. Andy Dalton comes in. Talent is underutilized. And they fell short. They fell flat on their faces in a year where they could have won the division, and they fell flat on their faces. And who's to blame? Well, you could blame the talent. You could blame the coaching. But I blame it all. It was a misused players in misused situations, getting tired and not having the players enough to, even in that last game of the season against Carolina, the Saints were still playing their asses off
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
at
they
the
didn't
end of the
quit.
game.
There's no doubt about that. They
And
did
they
not quit.
still lost. And they still lost.
In half of the Saints loss, I can say this incredibly comfortably. The Saints defense was the best unit on the field despite them losing. And
Absolutely.
normally when you watch a football game, when you have the best unit on the field and it's clearly the best, you win that game. And that's just at the end of the day a testament that the
I mean,
system that they were trying to run just wasn't coherent enough.
granted, in that game against Philadelphia towards the end of the season, Gardner Minshew was playing.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I was not expecting them to win that game at all.
No.
And they came out and they fought. And that's the one thing about the New Orleans Saints that I think for a lot of teams in the NFC, I think speaking for Carolina and speaking for the Saints, I think their persistence and not actually giving up in a year that had many, many challenges for them is a good sign moving forward.
Absolutely.
And I think that both teams are in fairly good positions moving forward. But both teams need to figure out that quarterback situation. They need to figure out the edge rushing situation. But for the Saints, I feel like the Saints have more needs than the Panthers do in terms of figuring things out. And then they have the question mark of Alvin Kamara. And so when you look at all this and you put all the pieces together, The Saints are trending down instead of up in a division where they should be trending up.
Click right here for more action from the NFC South. And over here is our next team 2022 review, Philadelphia Eagles. So far, yet so short. Try covering it underneath route once in your life.